Have you ever felt like you were standing in the middle of chaos, searching for something real? Like no matter how hard you try, how fast you run, how much you achieve, there's still an emptiness that lingers? The world tells us to move, to hustle, to chase after success, love, purpose, whatever we think will make us whole. But what if the thing we are searching for isn't found in the noise, but in the silence? What if it's not in the doing, but in the being? We live in a world that constantly demands more effort, more success, more proof that we are enough. And yet with all this striving, so many people still feel lost, still feel disconnected, still feel like something is missing, because no matter how much we try to fill ourselves with things, experiences, or even people, nothing truly satisfies when we are out of alignment with what's greater than us. But what if I told you that presence, real, unshakable, undeniable presence, is not something you have to chase? It's not something you have to earn. It's already here waiting for you. The question is, are you still enough to notice it? Life moves fast. The noise of responsibilities, expectations, and distractions can feel overwhelming. Every day we wake up to a world demanding our attention. Emails, deadlines, social media, the pressure to be more, do more, and achieve more. And in all this chaos, it's easy to lose ourselves. We drown in the external voices telling us who we should be, what success looks like, and how to keep up with the pace of life. But in the midst of it all, there's something deeper, something quieter, something calling us inward. There's a space within us that doesn't chase, that doesn't strive, that doesn't need validation from the world. It's not found in the noise, but in the stillness, the moments when we pause long enough to listen. But the problem is, most of us don't pause. We fill every gap with noise, every silence with distraction. We scroll through our phones when we feel uncomfortable. We keep the TV on for background noise. We say yes to things we don't even want to do just to avoid the discomfort of sitting alone with our thoughts. But have you ever noticed that some of the biggest revelations in life come in the quiet moments? When the music fades, when the crowd disappears, when the world stops demanding and we are left with nothing but ourselves. That's when the whisper comes. That's when we feel something shift inside of us, something that reminds us we were never meant to be consumed by the chaos of the world. That whisper doesn't come in competition with the noise. It waits for us to quiet down, to be still, to listen. Many of us are searching for peace, but we're looking in all the wrong places. We think if we just achieve that next goal, we'll feel fulfilled. If we just fix that broken relationship, we'll feel whole. If we just have more money, more influence, more recognition, we'll finally be satisfied. But over and over again, we reach those milestones and the emptiness is still there. That's because peace was never meant to be found in the external. It has always been an internal experience. Think about the moments in life where you felt truly at peace. It wasn't when you were proving yourself. It wasn't when you were performing for people's approval. It wasn't when you were running after things that ultimately left you drained. No, it was in those rare, quiet moments when you let your guard down, when you stopped trying to control everything, when you simply allowed yourself to just be. But in a world that moves at lightning speed, stillness can feel unnatural. We're conditioned to equate busyness with importance. We think if we're not constantly moving, we're falling behind. So we run, we hustle, we try to keep up, and in doing so, we silence the very thing that's trying to guide us, trying to anchor us, trying to remind us who we really are. What if the presence we're looking for isn't something we have to chase, but something we need to surrender to? What if the peace we seek isn't something we need to earn, but something we already have access to? The problem is never about it being far away. It's about us being too distracted to recognize it. But here's the truth. The weight of the world will never stop pressing on you. There will always be another demand, another distraction, another reason to keep going and never pause. If you wait for life to slow down before you make space for stillness, you'll be waiting forever. You have to be intentional. You have to choose to listen to the whisper even when the noise is loud. You have to create space to hear what has been speaking to you all along. The world will always try to define you. It will tell you who you are based on your achievements, your failures, your past mistakes, and your future potential. But there's a deeper voice, a truer voice that doesn't need any of that to know your worth. And that voice isn't in the chaos. It's in the quiet. It's in the stillness. It's in the moments where you finally stop running long enough to recognize that everything you've been searching for has been within you all along. So the question isn't whether the whisper is there. The question is whether we're willing to listen. Life is always shifting. One moment everything feels secure, your plans are in place, your relationships are steady, your path is clear. Then suddenly, without warning, things start changing. The job you thought was stable disappears. The relationship you thought would last starts crumbling. The version of yourself you used to recognize feels foreign. The world around you keeps moving, evolving, demanding that you adjust. And in those moments, it's easy to feel lost. It's easy to wonder if you'll ever find solid ground again. But if there's one thing life teaches us, it's that change is inevitable. Nothing stays the same. The people around us grow and evolve just as we do. The dreams we once had shift into new realities. The things we once thought we couldn't live without become distant memories. And while change is necessary, it doesn't always feel comfortable. In fact, sometimes it feels like everything is falling apart. But the truth is, when everything shifts, the real test is not about controlling the change. It's about staying anchored in the middle of it. Most people try to resist change. They fight to hold on to what's familiar, even if it no longer serves them. They try to recreate old seasons, hoping they can get back to the way things used to be. But the past was never meant to be a place we stay. It was only meant to be a chapter in a bigger story. And if we spend all our time looking back, we miss the opportunity to grow into what's ahead. Anchoring yourself in a shifting world means recognizing that while everything around you may be uncertain, there is something within you that remains steady. There is a foundation inside of you that doesn't move when circumstances change, that doesn't break when life feels heavy. And the key is learning how to stay connected to that foundation, even when everything else feels like it's spinning out of control. Think about a tree in the middle of a storm. The wind comes, the rain falls, the branches sway, the leaves are stripped away. But as long as the roots are deep, the tree remains standing. It may lose some things in the process, but it does not fall. That's the kind of stability we need in life, the kind that allows us to bend without breaking, to shift without losing ourselves. But that kind of stability doesn't come from external things. It doesn't come from relationships, careers, or status, because all of those things can change in an instant. It comes from something deeper, something unshakable, something that isn't dependent on circumstances. People often look for stability in things that were never meant to provide it. They rely on financial security, but money can disappear. They rely on relationships, but people are human and can leave. They rely on their own strength, but even the strongest people have breaking points. The only way to truly stay anchored is to root yourself in something deeper than the things that come and go. And yet staying anchored doesn't mean you won't feel the weight of life. It doesn't mean you won't have moments where you question everything. It doesn't mean you won't struggle. But it does mean that no matter how many times you get knocked down, you'll always find your way back. It means that even when the world around you is uncertain, you don't have to be. It means that even when change comes, when the job shifts, when the friendships fade, when the plans fall apart, you don't have to crumble with them. Too many people live in fear of what's next. They hold on to what's comfortable, even when it's no longer good for them. They resist the natural flow of life because they're afraid of what the unknown might bring. But staying anchored isn't about resisting change. It's about trusting that no matter what happens, you are built to withstand it. It's about knowing that even in the uncertainty, there is something steady inside of you, something that will always guide you back to where you need to be. The world is going to keep shifting. Things you thought were certain may change. Doors you thought were open may close. But instead of fearing the movement, recognize that you don't have to be swept away by it. Because even when everything else moves, you don't have to. You can stand firm. You can remain steady. You can be anchored. Pain has a way of making us question everything. When life gets hard, when things fall apart, when we face struggles that seem unbearable, the first instinct is to ask, why me? Why did this happen? Why am I going through this? Why does it feel like no matter how much I push forward, something always pulls me back? These are the moments that test us. The moments that break us down and make us wonder if we'll ever be whole again. But what if the pain isn't just happening to us? What if it's happening for us? Fire is destructive. It consumes everything in its path, burning away what once was. But fire is also refining. It takes raw material and purifies it, burning away impurities so that what remains is stronger, purer, more resilient. The same is true for the struggles we face. When we go through hardship, it's easy to only see what we're losing. We focus on the pieces of ourselves that are being stripped away, on the things that are being taken from us. But if we look deeper, we might see that something greater is being shaped within us. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Strength isn't built when everything is easy. The greatest versions of ourselves are revealed in the moments we think we can't make it, when we're stretched beyond our limits, when we're forced to confront our deepest fears, when we feel like we've lost everything. That's when we discover what we're really made of. That's when we learn that we are stronger than we ever imagined. That's when we see that the fire isn't meant to destroy us. It's meant to transform us. But transformation isn't comfortable. It requires surrender. It requires letting go of who we used to be so we can step into who we are meant to become. And that's hard because sometimes we hold on to old versions of ourselves simply because they feel familiar. We cling to things that no longer serve us because we're afraid of what life looks like without them. But if something is being stripped away, maybe it's because it was never meant to be part of the next chapter. Maybe the fire is burning away the things that were keeping us stuck, keeping us small, keeping us from stepping into the fullness of who we were created to be. There are people who never move beyond their pain because they only see the loss, not the lesson. They allow their struggles to define them instead of refine them. They stay in cycles of bitterness, regret, and anger because they haven't realized that the pain was never meant to be the end of their story. It was just a part of the process. But when we shift our perspective, when we stop seeing our struggles as punishment and start seeing them as preparation, everything changes. Think about the hardest thing you've ever been through. Maybe it was a heartbreak. Maybe it was a failure. Maybe it was the loss of something or someone you thought you couldn't live without. At the time, it felt unbearable. It felt like the end. But now, looking back, you can see the ways it shaped you. You can see the lessons it taught you, the strength it built in you, the way it forced you to grow in ways you never would have otherwise. That doesn't mean the pain wasn't real. That doesn't mean it didn't hurt. But it does mean that even in the midst of the pain, something was happening beneath the surface. The most powerful transformations happen in the fire. The moments that feel like breaking points are actually turning points. The struggles that feel like they are tearing us apart are actually making room for something new. But we have to be willing to trust the process. We have to believe that what we're going through isn't just happening to hurt us. It's happening to push us into something greater. It's happening because we are being refined, strengthened, and shaped into the version of ourselves we were always meant to be. So the next time life feels overwhelming, the next time you find yourself in the fire, don't just ask, why me? Ask, what is being shaped in me? Ask, what is this teaching me? Because pain is not the end of your story. It's just the beginning of your transformation. We live in a world that constantly tells us to keep going, keep pushing, keep striving, keep proving. There is an unspoken rule that rest is a luxury, that slowing down means falling behind, that if you're not moving, you're losing. We measure success by productivity. We attach our worth to how much we can do, how much we can achieve, how much we can accomplish. And in this constant pursuit of more, we forget the power of stillness. We forget that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs don't come from pushing harder, but from learning how to be still. Stillness is uncomfortable for most people. The moment life gets quiet, we reach for something to fill the space. We scroll through our phones, we turn on the TV, we surround ourselves with noise because silence forces us to confront things we'd rather avoid. It makes us face our fears, our doubts, our insecurities. It makes us sit with our thoughts. And for many people, that's the scariest thing to do. But what if the stillness we avoid is actually the place where everything begins to shift? What if the very answers we've been searching for can only be found in the quiet? When we never slow down, we lose the ability to hear the things that truly matter. We become so consumed by the outside world that we forget to listen to what's happening inside of us. We ignore the exhaustion because we don't have time to deal with it. We suppress the emotions because they don't fit into our schedule. We silence our intuition because it doesn't align with the plans we've already made. But the truth is, we cannot pour from an empty cup. We cannot keep running on empty and expect to thrive. Stillness is not laziness. It's not weakness. It's not avoidance. Stillness is the space where clarity is born. It's where we step out of the noise long enough to recognize what's actually happening within us. It's where we allow ourselves to feel, to process, to realign. And yet most of us avoid it because we've convinced ourselves that stillness is wasted time. But some of the greatest decisions you will ever make, some of the biggest shifts in your life won't come from running fast. They'll come from learning how to pause. There is a difference between movement and progress. Just because you're always in motion doesn't mean you're actually growing. Some people spend their entire lives running, but never actually get anywhere. They chase after things that don't fulfill them. They pursue goals that don't align with their true purpose. They keep moving because stopping feels too risky. But in reality, the only way to know if you're on the right path is to take a moment to be still. Think about a storm. When the wind is raging, when the rain is falling, when everything is in chaos, the natural reaction is to panic, to react, to try and force something to change. But in the middle of every storm, there is a stillness. The eye of the storm, the calm within the chaos. And if you can find that stillness, if you can learn how to be anchored, even when everything around you is uncertain, that is where your power lies. People often say they want peace, but they chase it in all the wrong places. They think if they just fix their circumstances, they'll feel calm. If they just accomplish that next goal, they'll finally feel whole. But peace is not found in external things. It's an internal state. It's something you cultivate, something you choose, something you carry with you no matter what's happening around you. And it starts with stillness. The world will always try to keep you busy. It will always give you another reason to keep moving, to keep proving, to keep pushing. But if you never take the time to pause, you will spend your life running in circles, chasing after things that don't fulfill you, ignoring the voice that has been trying to guide you all along. Learning to be still is not about stopping your life. It's about reconnecting with it. It's about stepping out of the chaos long enough to hear what has been waiting for you in the silence. The mind is a battlefield. Everyday thoughts are waging war inside of us. Thoughts of doubt, fear, insecurity, comparison, and anxiety. Some days they whisper, other days they shout. But no matter how loud or soft they come, they have the power to shape how we see ourselves, how we move through life, and how we respond to the challenges ahead. And if we are not intentional, if we are not mindful, we will let our thoughts control us instead of us controlling them. Most people don't realize how powerful their thoughts are. They think their struggles begin in their circumstances and the things happening around them. But the real battle starts in the mind. A person who believes they are defeated will move like they are defeated. A person who believes they are not enough will settle for less. A person who believes they will never change will never put in the effort to grow. It all starts in the way we think. Because every thought plants a seed, and whatever we water the most is what will grow. There are people who have spent years trapped in the same cycles because they have believed the same lies. Lies that say you will never be more than this. Lies that say you are not worthy of love. Lies that say you will always be broken. And because they have heard these lies for so long, they have mistaken them for truth. They have carried them like baggage, never realizing that the weight they feel isn't coming from their reality. It's coming from the beliefs they have accepted. But here's the thing about thoughts. They are not always truth. Just because something feels real does not mean it is real. Just because fear tells you that you will fail does not mean failure is your only option. Just because your past tells you that you are unworthy does not mean you cannot step into something greater. The problem is too many people let their emotions define their reality. They assume that because they feel stuck, they are stuck. Because they feel afraid, they should be afraid. But if we only ever move based on our emotions, we will always be controlled by them. That is why renewing the mind is essential. It means being aware of what you allow to take root in your thoughts. It means recognizing when you are being led by fear instead of faith. It means challenging the thoughts that tell you that you are not enough and replacing them with the truth that you are. It is not about ignoring reality. It is about shaping your perspective in a way that allows you to move forward instead of staying stuck. Imagine walking through life with a lens that is cracked and dirty. No matter where you look, everything is distorted. The world around you could be full of opportunity, but through that broken lens, all you see is limitation. You could be surrounded by love, but through that broken lens, all you see is rejection. This is what happens when we don't renew our minds. We see everything through the filter of our past wounds, our fears, our insecurities. And unless we clean that lens, unless we actively change the way we think, we will continue to live in a reality that was never meant to define us. The mind will believe whatever you feed it the most. If you constantly replay your failures, your mind will convince you that you are a failure. If you constantly dwell on your fears, your mind will convince you that fear is stronger than you. But if you make the choice to speak life, to challenge the negative thoughts, to replace them with words that build rather than break, everything begins to shift. Because transformation doesn't start in the hands. It doesn't start in the circumstances. It starts in the mind. Some people are waiting for their lives to change before they change their mindset. They think if they just get the right opportunity, if they just get out of a difficult situation, then they will finally think differently. But the truth is, life doesn't change first. The mind does. If you wait for the perfect conditions to start thinking in a new way, you will always be waiting. The process begins. The shift happens in the moment you decide that you will no longer let your thoughts be dictated by fear, by comparison, by the weight of your past. You have the power to choose what you believe. You have the power to choose what you feed your mind. And in that choice, you are shaping the direction of your life. The mind is a battlefield. But victory is possible when you decide to fight for it. Timing is one of the hardest things to trust. We live in a world that teaches us to rush, to hustle, to force things to happen on our own schedule. We are taught that if something doesn't happen when we want it to, then we must be doing something wrong. If the opportunity doesn't come fast enough, we assume it never will. If the relationship doesn't happen when we expect it to, we assume it's not meant for us. We measure time by our own expectations, and when life doesn't align with those expectations, we become frustrated, impatient, and sometimes even bitter. But the truth is, there is a season for everything. There is a time for planting and a time for harvesting, a time for waiting and a time for moving. The problem is, most people want the harvest without the patience it takes to let things grow. They want the reward without the waiting. They want the destination without the journey. And when things don't happen in the timing they expected, they start to doubt if they ever will. Waiting is uncomfortable. It makes us feel like we are stuck, like we are falling behind while everyone else is moving forward. We look around and compare our journey to others, wondering why they seem to be getting ahead while we are still in the same place. We question whether we are doing something wrong, whether we missed a step, whether we should be trying harder. But just because something isn't happening yet doesn't mean it's not happening at all. Just because you can't see progress doesn't mean progress isn't being made. Think about nature. A seed doesn't grow into a tree overnight. It spends time beneath the soil, hidden from sight, taking root before it ever begins to sprout. If you judge the seed by what you could see on the surface, you might think nothing was happening. You might think it was never going to grow. But beneath the soil, something is shifting. Roots are forming. The foundation is being built. And when the time is right, when the process has been completed, the seed breaks through the ground, and what was once unseen becomes visible. This is how life works. There are times when we feel buried, when nothing seems to be changing, when we wonder if all the effort we are putting in is even worth it. But what if we aren't buried? What if we are planted? What if the waiting season isn't a punishment but a preparation? What if the delay isn't denial but development? What if the reason things haven't happened yet is because the foundation is still being built? Most people underestimate the power of preparation. They want the breakthrough, but they don't realize that the process is what makes them ready for it. If you were given everything you wanted the moment you asked for it, you wouldn't be able to handle it. You wouldn't have the wisdom, the strength, or the capacity to sustain it. That is why some doors don't open immediately. It's not because they aren't meant for you. It's because you are still being prepared for them. Look at the greatest success stories. The people who achieved things beyond imagination didn't just wake up one day and arrive at greatness. They went through seasons of struggle, of waiting, of uncertainty. They faced rejection, setbacks, and disappointments. But instead of quitting, instead of forcing things to happen on their own terms, they trusted the process. They allowed the waiting season to shape them, to strengthen them, to teach them the lessons they would need for the next level. And when the time was right, the doors opened. The opportunity arrived. And because they had been prepared, they were ready. Trusting the timing of your life is one of the hardest things to do because it requires surrender. It requires believing that even when you don't see results, something is still happening. It requires letting go of your timeline and embracing the process instead of resisting it. It requires faith that what is meant for you will come in its perfect time, not too soon, not too late, but exactly when it's supposed to. So many people spend their lives in frustration, trying to force things that aren't ready yet. They waste energy worrying about things they can't control instead of focusing on what they can control. And in doing so, they miss the beauty of the present moment. They miss the lessons that are hidden in the waiting. They miss the opportunity to grow into the person they need to be in order to receive what is coming. There is a reason for every season. There is purpose in the waiting. And when you learn to embrace the process instead of rushing through it, you realize that nothing is ever wasted, The waiting is not empty time. It is preparation. It is transformation. It is growth. And when the time is right, everything will fall into place exactly as it was always meant to. We spend so much of our lives searching for meaning, searching for purpose, searching for something to make us feel whole. We chase after things believing they will complete us, only to find that they leave us just as empty as before. We try to control time, force doors open, and make things happen on our own terms, forgetting that true transformation doesn't come from striving, it comes from surrender. But what if everything you've been looking for has been with you all along? What if the presence you seek isn't found in the rush, but in the stillness? What if the breakthrough you're waiting for isn't about changing your circumstances, but changing your perspective? The battles we fight are not always external. The real war happens in the mind. The thoughts we feed, the beliefs we hold, the way we choose to see ourselves. These are the things that shape our reality.